What's up, students? How are you guys? Welcome, welcome. For those that are joining us for the ACT review today, we hope you guys are ready to go, ready to discuss. If you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, please don't hesitate to stop me during the middle of at any point. We want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to ask as many questions as you can. So yeah, again, we'll get started. Does everybody that's online, if everybody's good to go, we'll talk a little bit about what. Just about general thoughts. I hope everybody's staying healthy and staying safe as we kind of work through these different, this unexpected time, certainly. Okay, so one of the things, guys, that I want you to pay attention to. So on Instagram, guys, we're going to be posting updates. So I know that a lot of you guys are unsure, and so are we at this point, but unsure as to when the ACT is going to be, if it's going to be rescheduled, whether or not it's going to be rescheduled. If you follow us at Star Tutors, we'll be posting stories. But please make sure that you guys are staying up to date. Having said that, if you guys have not already registered, for the June and July tests, the June and July ACT exams, okay, these are the official ones. I highly suggest you guys do that as quickly as possible. The reason I say that is because those tests, we're thinking they're going to be really, really full. The April test is one of the busiest tests, if not the busiest test of the year. And it becomes really, really important that you guys sign up early, especially if you haven't taken a test in a while or if you weren't already signed up for April. Okay, so make sure that you guys do that. And then the final thing that I want you guys to be reminded of, we have, and many of you I'm sure have signed up already, but we have our Star U tutoring app. We just actually came out with advanced content for that. The app is not designed, so just so you guys know, the app is not designed to necessarily replace practice tests. We still see a ton of value in practice tests that the ACT officially releases. We still use those. But the value that we see is that the app gives you like 5 specific questions that deal with punctuation or semicolons or matrices or logarithms for the advanced content. I highly encourage you guys to create student accounts on the app if you guys haven't already. I think it's really, really important so that when you see a practice test, and we posted this on the website as well, but when you see a practice test, rather than having to go back and comb through, do test corrections in that, rather than having to comb through an entire new test, you guys just have 5 practice problems to go over the questions that you're specifically missing. Does that all make sense, guys? Again, for anybody watching, can you guys just give me a good to go? Good to go. Those are just the general talking points I want to get through. There's a lot of uncertainty with where we're going to be here over the course of the next several months. I'm not sure what school is going to look like. If you're a student here in the U.S., I think pretty much every school district in the U.S. has been canceled or postponed, at least temporarily. I know a lot of you guys are doing virtual stuff. But for right now, with this uncertainty, we're going to try to keep you guys updated as much as possible. One of the other things that we're thinking about doing, guys, and you please feel free to comment if you would find this valuable. In addition, so the majority of you guys as juniors would probably, or if you're a sophomore, you guys, I would imagine, would probably be in either, well, maybe not you guys for geometry, but maybe somebody, geometry, algebra 2, right, algebra 2, and pre-calc. Right, pre-calc, calc A, okay? We're thinking about doing, and again, please feel free to comment if you guys feel that this would be beneficial, but we're thinking about doing lessons twice a week, so 45-minute lessons twice a week where I sit there and I've been a long-time math tutor, and I just discuss different topics that show up within geometry, algebra 2, and pre-calc unrelated to the ACT. Some of those topics will definitely come up on the ACT or the SAT, if you're thinking about going back and forth. But this is more just to keep you guys up to speed so that when you get back to school, you don't feel like you're way behind. And again, we're thinking about doing those twice a week. So if anybody has any thoughts or comments on that, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to just post it in the chat or post it in the comments. We'll read through those and try to see if we can come up. Again, that would be completely free, probably on Tuesdays and Thursdays for about 45 minutes. We'd go through things like conics, limits, if you're in pre-calculus, conics and limits. Or if you're in algebra 2, we certainly do factoring, quadratic functions, all that kind of stuff, graphing functions, vertex form, geometry. We can go over proofs. We can do pretty much everything. And yeah, we're thinking about doing that starting next week. So again, if you guys have any thoughts or comments on that, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll get going with the ACT review. Can everybody who's watching, or if you guys feel comfortable with it, can everybody give me a good to go? Everybody feel comfortable? Everybody feel good to go? Okay. Okay, so guys, what I want to start out with today is just talking about a general feel for the ACT. Okay, general thoughts on the ACT. Thanks, guys, by the way. Thanks for commenting. I appreciate it. It always helps me keep the pacing of this stuff down so you guys aren't just listening to me ramble on for a while. One of the things that I think is so important about the ACT and understanding it, I can't stress this enough. When I was a kid, I was a horrible student. I was very lazy. I shouldn't have been. That's not a good trait. If you find yourself procrastinating a lot now, don't be that person. Okay, but I was very lazy. But on tests like this, I was very, very competitive for whatever reason and wanted to do really well. So I did well on these tests. But one of the things that really helped me as a kid, and we always teach this in our classes today, is that it is so important to understand the scale. So if you guys, for those that have already done that, can you guys just give some positive encouragement or some positive feedback within the chat? But if you understand the scale of the ACT, specifically that every question on every section, every question is worth the same amount of points, you will thrive on a test like this, okay? Because I was so lazy as a kid, one of the things that I did well was if I found a question that I didn't feel like going through or didn't want to answer because I was lazy enough, I would just skip it. And what that ended up happening is if I put in the time or if I was competitive on the 55 other math questions out of 60, you can still get a 34, 35, 36 without having to answer the 5 hardest questions or the 5 questions that you don't know how to do. So can everybody give me right? Does that all make sense? So important. Okay? So understanding the scale. If you guys need a scale, we're happy to provide those. If you want to see a scale, but if the better you understand the scale and how many questions you actually have to get right, the better you're going to do on this test. For example, and for those that have watched our videos in the past, the videos of me taking practice tests, or Owen takes one, Caitlin takes one. If you guys, on every ACT test, let's say on average, if you get 50 out of 60 questions right on the math section, math's a good one to go over because the ACT math section is that and the SAT reading section. Those two sections are by far the hardest two sections of either test, SAT reading and ACT math. So if you get 50 out of 60 in school, in American school, that's a B minus. Right? It's like 82 something, 82.6 maybe, 82.6% I think. That's a B minus. On every released test, I think on literally every test, a 50 out of 60 on every released ACT test in the last 5 years. You guys there might be one scale or two scales that isn't perfect like this. That's a 30 plus. Okay, it can even get up to a 32 when you get a 50 out of 60, like on the BO4 test, for example. The BO4 test is a really hard math test, just a really hard test in general. 50 out of 60 would have gotten you a 32. A 30 is in the top 5%. Right? So that's like getting a 95%. And that's where this whole idea of the scale comes into play. The better you understand the scale and how to be a great test taker, and that all comes from understanding how it's scored, the better you're going to do on this thing. So that would be in the 95th percentile. So, again, kind of going back to why laziness actually works here. If you guys get 50 out of 60, if you get the equivalent of a B minus in school, but you're really confident that you answered those 50 out of 60 accurately, you get the equivalent of a 95% in school, that's an A. Okay, that is just so important to recognize and realize. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll talk about reading strategy in a second. Yeah, absolutely. And so reading strategies are going to be so important as well, and that actually kind of plays right into this. We'll talk about reading today, but I want everybody that hasn't looked at the scale, does this all make sense? Everybody that hasn't looked at a scale, and then we'll go right into the reading stuff. Okay, so that's great. Hopefully everybody understands that, the idea of the scale. It's particularly true of the reading section. I encourage you guys to go back and look at a scale for the reading section. You don't have to get that many questions right to still get above a 30. On the reading test, here's what you have to do. And a couple of these strategies are going to be really helpful that you can implement right now and implement today. And a couple of these strategies are not going to be as helpful, okay, because it's going to require you guys to actually go back and read. okay, and read more, not just with the ACT. But there's a couple things you want to recognize on the reading section. Okay, reading on the ACT is obviously extremely time sensitive. Okay, but not many students know this. It's very time sensitive. Not many students know this, but the reading passages are written at an 8th grade reading level. Okay, and most students don't know that, and so I think sometimes we can psych ourselves out on this section more than any other. If you know that and you stay extremely focused, right? If you stay extremely focused throughout the entire section, okay, you will do really well. The questions are so easy. So the first thing that I would recommend, and this is going to be counterintuitive to what you might think, I would take a reading test untimed, because this is going to tell you two things. If you're looking for drills or looking for ways to improve your reading section, take a test untimed, because it's going to tell you one of two things. When you take it untimed, you should be checking yourself as you read, because it's untimed. How many times do you lose focus within the passage? How many times do you find yourself like looking out into space? If it's untimed, it doesn't matter, because you can document that. If you find yourself doing more, if you find yourself looking out into space even once per passage, it's going to be extremely hard to get a 36 or to ever reach a 36 on the reading section. Because on a timed test, we need all of that, and it's particularly on this one where it's really time sensitive. So that's one thing I would do. I would immediately take a reading section untimed and see how focused you can be all the way through every reading passage. The second thing, so that's really important. This is going to be dealing with focus. And the other thing that we often have our students do in terms of drills is we have them take, so once you take a test on time, you go back and you challenge yourself. So this is just challenge yourself on untimed passage, challenge to not go back on any question. Okay? So here's the deal. If you focus and you challenge yourself after you read an untimed passage, challenge yourself. You can't go back. This is just a drill. Don't think that I want you to do this every time, but just to practice. If you challenge yourself not to go back on any questions, including the ones that say like in line 52, this word most nearly means, right? If you challenge yourself not to go back on any question, not one question, but you're really focused on the main idea, right? Main idea and the tone, right? You're really going to find out quickly how well you're actually reading. That's the best way to figure out if you're actually reading for comprehension, because it is my undying opinion. I've tutored for a lot of big companies. A lot of people have different strategies for this. Without a doubt, I've seen 1,000 students in the last 7 years. I've worked with 1,000 students in some capacity. Without a doubt, the students that you hear about that can pick and choose, that go right to the questions and then they jump back, those students and they get the 36s or whatever, those students could get a 36 in any way possible. That is by far the least consistent way I've ever seen. So if you're jumping to the questions and then jumping back to the passage without actually reading the passage, I've worked with companies that have suggested doing that. Without a doubt, that has been the least consistent strategy that I've seen, that I've had to teach in my time doing this. That's been the least effective strategy. So I highly encourage you guys to read the entire passage. Read it carefully, knowing that it's at an 8th grade reading level. It truly is. It's only 45 word lines, right? There's like 90 lines, but it's double columned. There's really only 45 Word document lines. If you read and you read carefully, and this will be a great drill for you to do to challenge yourself, if you read those 45 lines and you read carefully and you don't know anything that you just read, that's going to be really telling on how much you actually comprehended what you were reading. I promise you guys, and for those that have seen our videos on the reading section, and there's some of our most popular videos on the channel, I promise you that if you read for comprehension, you will find the questions to be very easy and you will remember exactly where you found it. But when we start just doing timed reading tests over and over and over again, and we're trying to read everything and trying to gather, there's too much sensitivity to the time that there's no way we reflect in real time. And so taking an untimed test and then challenging yourself not to go back for any question. You're not allowed to go back to the passage. You have to comprehend. You have to recall it from memory. No matter how long it takes to read, that will tell you whether or not you're really comprehending. And as you get better and better at that, you'll see it in the videos. This is the one section where the questions are very straightforward, very easy. There's so many questions that are just directly related to the passage, but it takes a second to do that. And that it takes a second for me. And I read a lot as a high school student. I love to read. I read now a lot, and it's still, you have to be really focused all the way through the reading passages for 35 minutes after taking a math test, after taking a grammar test, to do really well. Those are, without doubt, though, these are the definitely the best drills to look out for. The best drills to do to improve your reading section. Is it going to happen right away? No, it's not going to happen right away. This is a hard section of the test because you have to get the timing down. Is it a section that I feel very confident in saying that everybody can score above a 30? Absolutely. Because these passages are just not very hard. I wouldn't say that about the math section. I don't think everybody can score above a 30 on the math section. I think everybody can score above a 30 on the English section, and I think everybody can score above a 30 on the reading section if you put in the time and effort to really read for comprehension. That's hard for students to do today because a lot of you, we're so distracted all the time that sitting down, and this is what they're testing because you'll have to do this in college, sitting down and really reading is so, so critical. Okay? Does that all make sense, guys? Everybody who asked about the reading test, does that all make sense? Yeah, Michelle, and then Ahmed, well, I'll come to you because that's a harder question for math. Let's wait on that. Ahmed, can you just wait on that one for a second? That's a great question, but let's just stick with this reading and English stuff. Michelle, I just saw your comment about shows patrons sitting in a movie theater as horse leaps. Would it be horse leaps or horses leap? So the big thing there, Michelle, is it'd be a horse leaps. You have to have this definite, or you have to have this indefinite article. A horse leaps to establish that it's singular, or horses leap. Horses leap. Okay, a horse leaps over the fence, horses leap over the fence. That's an English question. Is that all good, guys? Sorry, I know we're jumping around here a bit. I'm going to try to keep it on course. Like, we'll talk about English and reading, but that was just a quick question. Ahmed, we'll get to the one about math, but that one's a little bit more in depth. So before we get into math, does anybody have any other questions about the reading section? We started with reading. Any other questions about reading? How you guys doing? How you feeling? Everybody good? Okay, another way to one last thing on the reading section to finish, to try to, if you guys are struggling to finish, each paragraph, so when we go through this, when we have students in our classes do this, each paragraph will be talked. So like, let's say the whole thing is about Edison, right? Thomas Edison. I don't know why it would be that, but like, it's a biography. It's passage number 3. It's a biography. Okay, and it's about Edison. Each paragraph will likely talk about something related to his life, right? Each paragraph, something related to his life. Another way to read and to finish faster and to be really better at the questions, guys, the one misconception about the reading test is that you make up time while reading, that there's some special formula while reading. It's not the reading, it's the questions. If you read for comprehension, you can make up so much time answering the questions quickly if you're trusting yourself. If you really read for comprehension, the questions are really, really easy. But in order to do that, you really have to be focused on doing this on time. Each paragraph is talking about like Edison's father, for example, and his relationship with his father. In that paragraph, something that can help you, if the first or second paragraph is talking about father, right? Something that can help you is to circle father and remember that specific, each paragraph generally talks about one thing and then the next one talks about something else. Circle the main idea of that paragraph because then when you get to the questions, if it asks about fathers, right, or Edison's father, you can quickly jump back and reread if you need to. Otherwise, trust yourself on the reading. Trust yourself on the reading. Is that good, guys? Good overall there? Okay, so if you guys feel pretty comfortable with that, Michelle, hopefully that makes sense. I can see your, okay, a horse leaps. Okay. We had a question about the math section here. It's a pretty high level question. Okay. Let's see. I know it's not really. Let's see. Let x and y be non-zero real numbers such that 2y. Let x and y be non-zero real numbers. 2y plus 1. 2y plus 1. Let's see. 2y plus 1 is equal to. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to write this down. Is equal to 2x. Hey, Ahmed, is this what the question is saying? 2y plus 2 times 2y plus 2 is equal to 2x? Is equal to something? Is that what it's asking in terms of x? Can you just confirm that that's the question before I jump into it? Because I'm going to talk about it for those that need help with the math section in terms of x. For those that need help with the math section. Yeah, guys, I'm glad, for the readers out there, for the guys that asked about the reading questions, I'm glad that you guys found that helpful. Okay? Is that what this one says? This is a good question. Also, guys, if you have questions about something specific like this math question, can you guys post where you're seeing this so that others can see it? If you guys have the practice test in front of you, can you guys post the form number, so like 74F, and then the actual question number so others can see it as well, whether they see it tonight, right now, today, or see it down the line. Okay, it'll be important, I think, for others to be able to watch this and see this. Okay, if this is the question, all you have to do, well first thing, two things first. One is that if you guys are looking at this question, one of the things we talked about in the SAT group yesterday, and I think it's really important, this is dealing with math. For those that have watched our videos in the past, I took the BO4 test, and I did it without a calculator. I'm an idiot. I forgot my calculator the day that we were supposed to film. You'd think that I'd be a little bit smarter than that. I was not. Okay, and one of the things that we did and that we noticed was that there are so many questions on the ACT that should not be answered first. And for those that have watched the videos, you've heard us talk about this 3-pass method. Okay, and really what this comes down to for the math section, and I encourage you guys to go back and watch, it's really just easy questions first, right? Find the easy questions first. So in a question like this, and some of you will be at this level, so some of you guys will be at this level, so I don't mean to discount this, but a question like this should really only be looked at if you're trying to solve and you're already at 32 on the math section plus. If you're above a 32, then this is a great question to go over. But if not, one of the things I want you guys to continue to think about is the scale, that you only need to get 50 out of 60 questions right in order to get a 30. And a question like this is going to throw us off so quickly because there's just so many different ways we can make a simple mistake. A lot of this test is going to be about not making simple mistakes. The better you can be about staying focused and not making simple mistakes, the better you're going to do on every section of the test, particularly math and science. Okay? So in a question like this, we're going to distribute. Look, I hope this is right. I'm not exactly sure what the exam is here, but 2y plus 2 is equal to 2x again. Okay? Is that right? Let me know if it is. Hopefully that's right. Let me see if I can solve. Okay, I think this is what's going on. So 2y, we're going to distribute this in here. So we get 2y plus 4. We're looking at it in terms of x. Let's see. 2y plus 2. If we make y equal to 5, we get 10 plus 2 equals 2x. So 12 is equal to 2x. X equals 6. So y equals 5. So we get 2 times 5 plus 4 is equal to 14. So in terms of x, we just get 2x plus 2. Is that an answer choice? 1 over 2x plus 2. 1 over 4x. That's not an answer choice. First of all, I gotta confirm that this is what we're solving for. If you guys ever have specific questions again, you guys can always remember to post the form and post the question number because I can pull it up on my computer really quick. I have every test since like 1999 on my computer, so I can pull those up for you guys really quickly. let me know before we jump too much into this, because I don't want to waste too much time for students. But if somebody pulls that up, then let me know what the exact question it is. Okay, on top of that, guys, let's keep going. Okay, let's keep going with this idea. Okay, as you guys are working through this stuff, one of the things I want you to remember is that there's one section above all that where you get we'll call it the most bang for your buck in terms of the time it takes to prepare versus the time that it takes to prepare versus the point increase. So for those that have watched the past videos, I continue to make this reference to our StarU tutoring app. Again, you guys can choose to download it if you want, but one of the things that's really beneficial is if you go onto our StarU tutoring app and you click ACT and then you click ACT English, one of the big ones, and this says punctuation here, one of the big ones is this punctuation section, okay? And you guys can read all about semicolon rules. It's all right there if you guys download the app. If you guys click ACT and then ACT English and punctuation, in terms of the most amount of points, I just want you guys to remember, and then I'll move on from it, there are 10 to 12 questions out of 75 total questions, 10 to 12 out of 75 total, that deal with punctuation. Okay? So punctuation is really difficult because we don't speak it, right? You guys are probably not saying to your friends like, hey, comma, Alex, or hey, Alex, comma, what are you doing today, question mark, right? You guys aren't saying punctuation out loud, I don't think. I've never seen 16, 17-year-olds do that before. If you are, then more power to you. You're probably doing well at this section. But if you guys focus on punctuation, because these questions tend to be hard, right? Semicolon rules, colon rules, dashes, or I shouldn't say hard, but just not reviewed very often. If you guys focus on this, and maybe some of you has anybody done this already, focused on these rules? If you guys focus on these rules, I guarantee that your score overall goes up. Because again, don't forget, guys, that when we talk about scoring and understanding the test, every section is worth the same amount of points too, right? It not only applies to every question on the sections, each one of these sections is just averaged out. Okay, so one of the things I want you guys to be aware of is that a lot of times our strategy is contradicts most students. It contradicts most, most people. And that's only because I've seen enough of these companies. I've worked for these companies over and over again, and none of the strategies seem to work that well if you just take it for one individual student. And so I try to take everything that I had learned from different places and try to incorporate all of that into what we're looking at now. And so one of the things that's counterintuitive, I think, is let's say you get a 32 on the English section and you get a 22 on the math section. A lot of times people will look at this 22 and they'll immediately want to focus on the math section. That's what we used to do at these companies. They tell us that we had to focus with a student on the math section. Well, if you're this good of 32 is in the top, you're in the top 4%. You're in the 96th percentile, right, for the English section. The chances that you go from a 32 to a 36 on English are very, very high. This going from a 32 to a 36, if you're on really any section, but on this one in particular, this is probably 2 hours worth of hard content memorization. If you spent 2 hours on really, really focusing on English content, you would go from a 32 to a 36, I'd almost guarantee it. It's by far the highest scoring section that we have for any students that come through our classrooms or that watch these videos, by far. And so if this 4 points is worth the same amount as you going from a 22 to a 26 on math, this is going to happen a lot faster. And so one of the things we always encourage students to do with their preparation, especially if you're doing it on your own, if you're preparing on your own, one of the things I want you guys to do is to use your, take advantage of your best section. Because what ends up happening, if you get a 36, if you're in the top scoring percentile of all students, that feels really good. It always feels good to get a lot of questions right or to be in the top of anything you're doing. And so when you start getting 36s on the English section, it gives you all the encouragement and momentum to focus on the math section, which maybe you don't, especially for students that don't love math, you probably don't wake up every day being like, can't wait to do ACT math today, right? That's probably not your first thought. But if you get a 36 on English and you're like, man, I'm doing pretty well at this. My overall score went up 1 full point because I did 4 points better on English, right? Each time you go up 4 points on any individual section, your overall score goes up 1 point. That's a super easy way to increase your score by 1 point. and then all of a sudden you're at a 36, that's not going to go down. We've rarely seen students go below a 30. If you get a 36 on one English practice test, you're going to get a 34 at least on every test you take from that point forward. That feels really good, and then all of a sudden going back to math and trying to get 26 plus on the math section is so much easier than just jumping into a bunch of math concepts and feeling overwhelmed right off the bat. Then your English score suffers and your math score suffers. So take advantage of your best section. That's one of the things that I want you guys to keep doing because it's just so important. Keep thinking about that. Okay? Does that all make sense, guys? Any other general questions? So again, I want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to ask any other general questions. Focus on punctuation. Obviously, that's a super important one. Any other general questions, guys? I have one or two other things that I want to talk about, but before we do that, before we talk about anything else, I just want to make sure that nobody else has any questions. If you do, please let me know. But then I'll talk about the two other things, and if we finish a little bit early, that's totally fine as well. So any other general questions, let me know. Okay? General questions, let me know. Okay? I think this is true. So as we're waiting for questions to come in, and maybe they don't. But I'm gonna, for those that have stuck with me for the last 30 minutes, I think there were more on at first, and for those that have stuck with me, I'm gonna leave you guys with some very important piece of information that I think is true. Don't quote me on this because I heard this from another teacher tutor that does this a lot as well. I'm not entirely sure if this is, don't quote me on this, but it makes total sense. The SAT and the ACT, at least some portion of them, the SAT and the ACT, at least some portion, are written by people that have a PhD in what's called psychoanalysis. Okay? Psychoanalysis. And as you guys can maybe determine by the name, PhD in psychoanalysis, okay, is super important. By the way, I just saw that trig question come through. I'll give you guys some trig thoughts here in a second. And also, tomorrow, guys, we're going to be going through rules-based questions on the ACT math section. So we'll get into those in a lot more depth tomorrow. For those that check out the channel, it'll show it. The schedule for tomorrow, I think it's at like 2 or 3 tomorrow afternoon. But PhD in psychoanalysis. If you have a PhD in psychoanalysis, you lay out, one of the other things you do besides, as fun as it is to to do SAT and ACT tests, you lay out grocery stores in order to get people to spend more money. I kid you not. I hope that's true because I've used it in a number of our classes in the past. If it's not true, it'll be devastating. Just kidding. But if it's not true, it still makes sense as a premise. I think it is true. I really do think that this is true. A psychoanalysis, they lay out grocery stores or retail stores to get you to spend more money. And if you guys ever walk into a grocery store, whenever I ask parents this, we'll present at high schools and I'll ask parents this question. Parents always know what's in the back of the grocery store, okay? And students never know because you guys aren't generally the ones buying. But if you walk into a grocery store the next time, check out what's in these middle aisles, okay? And what you'll notice is that it's all bad, right? It's all frozen food, candy, soda. And the reason I bring this up is because in a lot of ways that makes sense for the ACT. The essential items or the answers are always at the back of a grocery store, right? There's produce over here, so fruits and vegetables, okay? They're always at the back of the grocery stores, and all the things that you don't want are in the middle. So the analogy that I use, and again, this is why I think it is true because it makes sense, is that everything in these middle aisles are the things that you want to reach for. So it's not seeing the whole problem through. So you're walking along the middle aisles, right? You see, like, you went in there and you're going to get steak, you're going to get milk for the family or whatever. And all of a sudden you're like, I think I'll take some candy, right? Who's done that in any retailer? Like, I think I'll grab one of those. And that's what they want you to do. It's the same thing on the test. That these answers, because if you get a question right, you get it right. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. There's no partial credit like you'd see in school. These answers are the correct answers. And everything in between is what they want you to grab for. So you'll notice that a lot of the answer choices have negatives on the math section when the right answer, so it's -4, but the right answer is +4, because they know that it's really likely that you won't flip the sign. That's a simple mistake. That's a loss of focus, right? And so that's what they're looking for. They want you to grab for the chips or grab for that negative answer when the right answer is just 2 steps away or 1 step away, and you're grabbing the milk, you're grabbing the right answer, but instead you go for the frozen food or the soda because that's right there. That's right in front of you, and you just move on and you don't see the whole question through. So it's a great analogy to use. Oh, again, hopefully I haven't been stating that incorrectly, but hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of an interesting anecdote too, anecdote if nothing else. Okay, so on the trig section of the ACT math section, does everybody make sense? Does that all make sense to everybody? Sorry to jump off course there, but I always think that that's interesting. It's something that I always share with students as much as I can. Trig section for ACT math, here are the things that I'd have you guys remember. Okay, trig section, I'd have you guys remember law of sine and cosine. Law of sine and cosine. Okay, that's going to be one that comes up. It's going to be high level. Most of the trig section, we call these hard concepts. Whether or not you think trig is hard, I don't know. But the ACT deems trig to be a hard concept. It's hard concept, easy question. Okay, which means that if you know the rule, if you know these rules, you just tend to get these questions right every time. And we'll talk a lot more about this in tomorrow's lesson, where we specifically talk about math questions. But law of sine and cosine. I would also talk about graphs of sine and cosine. I've never seen a trig graph. I've never seen a tangent graph before on the test. Graphs of sine, cosine, all the basic trig functions, okay, and then trig identities. But all of these, I should probably write this. This is trig identities. There's a few trig identities that show up every now and then. Okay, all of these items, guys, are questions 45 through 60. Right, the math test gets harder as it goes. Basic trig is the only one that will show up before number 45, generally, or maybe 40. Basic trig will show up somewhere before number 40, maybe, but that's really the only one. Does that make sense, guys? Any questions on that? Those are the ones I remember. We'll go through specific questions tomorrow. I'll show you guys some things that I'm talking about in terms of rules-based questions. But generally, those are the ones that I'd stay focused on. Basic trig. Okay, again, that lesson tomorrow, we're going to be talking about rules-based questions in the sense that I actually don't want you guys to look at any questions that require you to plug in numbers or kind of take a shot in the dark, right? If you're plugging in numbers, you have a really high likelihood of making a simple mistake. I don't want you to do any of those questions before you get all the rules-based questions out of the way. So if you're really good at law of sines and cosines, and that happens to be question number 60, but you never get to 60 on the math section because you're too focused on the one that says like two odd integers add up to a certain number, right? Or you're really focused on permutations, and permutations are largely, they're a lot of times not rules-based, right? That becomes a big problem then if we don't ever see number 60, even though we knew what the rule was. We've got to find all the rules-based questions on the ACT math section before we do any of the theoretical questions where we're plugging in numbers, because we don't know 100% if we're going to get those plugging in numbers questions right. And more importantly, it's so easy to make a simple mistake on those that you're not going to maximize your score if you do too many of those problems before you see all the rules-based ones. Does that all make sense, guys? Can everybody give me a thumb? Everybody good to go on that stuff? Can you guys all comment good to go as you're following along? We'll talk more about that math stuff tomorrow as well again, but good to go if you guys are all following along. Great. Awesome, guys. Any other questions, guys, overall? Any other questions overall? Hopefully you guys are finding these to be helpful. We want to give you guys as much opportunity to continue to succeed on this test as we can. If you guys have any thoughts or comments on how we could make this better, you'll see tomorrow during the production of the broadcast tomorrow, I'll actually have the iPad that you see in some of our other videos, and I'll be working through specific question types on the 74F test. So that'll be a little bit more engaged. You guys will have the opportunity to see that test. You guys can print it out or have it pulled up as I work through it. But that'll be a little bit more engaged. Today is more of a review overall, just so you guys get a sense of what the ACT is or have any general questions answered. But yeah, I hope again everything is kind of sinking in, and I hope you guys are finding these to be helpful. If you have any suggestions on anything that we need to do in the future, please let me know. Otherwise, guys, that's pretty much all I had for today. I was planning on an hour. We're about 40 minutes right now. Does anybody have any other questions for me? Otherwise, we're going to sign off. If you guys have any other questions for me. Oh, looks like we got one maybe. Finding theta or arc length, that's a good question. So finding theta or arc length, we actually qualify that. That's actually not a trig question. We qualify that as an arcs of circles problem. It's a good one to go over. It's in the app too. So if you guys look at star U, this is a question. There's a specific chapter. It's called More Circles. It's a specific chapter within the star U app. Okay, more circles. The benefit of doing it on the app is that you just get more practice problems. If you're struggling with more circles and we go over it, I want you guys to see as many practice problems as you can. Okay? So if you guys look at this theta, right, the one thing you want to remember about the more circles section is that theta always corresponds. Okay, so theta is equal to theta over 360 degrees is always equal to the arc length, right, over the total circumference. So let's just say this is all the arc length of the theta sector, right? Arc length over circumference, total circumference. Okay, and theta over 360 is also equal to the area of the sector, over total area of circle. And again, don't get those confused. This one is pi r squared, and this one is 2 pi r. And then you just cross multiply on either example, and you can solve. They'll give you 3 out of 4 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. They'll give you 3 out of 4 of those, and they just want to see if you know how to solve from there. It's another good question, probably more like somewhere in the 30s or 40s for the math section, 30, 40, maybe early 50s. No, it's not that hard. It's 30 or 40 probably, somewhere in the 30s maybe. Okay, so that's in that. Word choice on the writing section, on the grammar section, definitely the hardest one to teach. So, right, you're talking about like the vocab questions, I assume. Carter, are you talking about vocab questions on the writing and language? I mean, on the English section, where it gives you like 4 different options and you have to choose. A good one to go over here, guys. If you guys look at question number 10 on the A10 exam, on the A10 ACT exam, if you guys have that form, you should check that question out. My 16, 17-year-old self would be embarrassed to say that I know that question by heart and know what they're asking. But the question number 10 on ACT A10 exam asks you for vocab, and it specifically asks you to, it's about notes, musical notes, coming out of a guitar, right? So, and one of the things they say is the notes appeared. Okay, they use the word appeared, and I'd say 95% of our students that take this practice test, you pick the word appeared. I can't remember. I think that's answer choice A. And then there's an answer choice that says issued. Okay, and this is the right answer because quite literally, notes can't appear. You don't see notes, and appear means to see notes. So the one thing that I would say is if you're struggling with a word choice, don't overthink the word choice. If you think it's the right answer, then go with it. But if you're kind of going back and forth and you don't know why like the word issue is incorrect, the thing that I would say is try to eliminate answers, particularly in this example. Right? This is a good example where you can eliminate the word appear, and that's the one that most students want to go with. If you eliminate the word appear, okay, if you eliminate the word appear, then there's only so many answer choices left, and you eliminated the one where you thought it was the right answer. So it's much easier then to choose from the other answer choices because appear doesn't work in truly the most literal way possible. Okay, Carter, does that make sense? Does that make sense? So again, it's the hardest one for me to teach. I can't really say much beyond that, only because obviously the word choices aren't going to show up the same on any given test. So anything you've seen in the past is not going to show up on a future test. So again, that creates a problem in terms of trying to teach it. The best thing that I can say is that generally speaking, there'll be one word choice that they want you to grab for, right? It's like the chips going down the aisle. They want you to grab for one answer like appeared. And it's your job to eliminate that one because you can't actually see musical notes. Okay? We have a question about the science section and finishing it on time. Okay, science and finishing on time. Carter, let me know if you have any other questions about English. Hopefully all that made sense. Okay, we had a question about science and finishing on time. There's two things I want to talk about with the science section. The first time we brought up science. The first is this idea that familiarity leads to success. Familiarity leads to success. Okay? And the reason that that's so important, familiarity leads to success, is think about the thing that you guys do the best in your lives. Okay, whatever you do the best, it can be the simplest thing. If you're, I don't know, I'm a great eater, for example. I eat well. Okay, if I'm eating, I've done that thousands, millions of times, whatever the number is. You have not, as a 16, 17-year-old, taken very many ACT science tests. And I don't care if you're the student that's taken 30 practice tests. Relatively speaking, taking 30 ACT science sections is not that many compared to what you do best in your life. If you're a great athlete or you're a great actor or actress, right? You've done that way more times than you've taken the ACT science section. So one of the things that's really important about science, again, is to take an untimed test. You guys are going to see a repeated theme of mine is to take these tests untimed so that you can really see them. One of the things that students do is they sit down, they hear about the ACT timing, they know that's going to be a factor, and then they just take time test after time test without actually reflecting on what they're going over. If you sit there and take an untimed science test and you just think to yourself, okay, what's working here? What are these questions that I'm looking at? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? That will be a huge, huge benefit to you when you get to the actual questions. Okay? Or rather, when you get to the actual test and you do have to time it. So untimed familiarity is so important, particularly on the last two sections, because there's not a lot of rules-based questions like there are in the English and math section. The second thing that you guys want to pay attention to on the science section is that there are 25 to 30 easy questions. 25 to 30 easy questions. Okay? There are 15 to 10. There's 10 to 15 hard questions. And there's not a ton of middle ground actually on the science section. The key is that if you see, because this test is not in order of difficulty, the science is not, you have to be really, really aware of how you're taking the test. On the science section, this is at the very end of the exam, and you guys are going to be tired, you're going to be overwhelmed. Everybody feels that way. For those that have watched our videos, when I just take one practice section now, and I'm old now, but when I just take one practice section, I feel exhausted after taking it if I'm really focused. And so you have to be extremely focused all the way through. When you get to the science test, you are tired. It's been 2.5 hours. You've looked through 75 grammar questions. You've looked through 60 math questions. You've read 4 passages in reading. And you've had to be focused on all of those very, very intently. When you get to the science test, your mind is starting to fall. And when you get to question number 2, if number 2 on the science test is the single hardest question on the entire exam, right? Single hardest. Okay, if number 2 is the single hardest question on the entire exam, and you spend time focusing on that question when you're exhausted and stressed, the downhill slope, right? The downhill trajectory, you're just like, you know what, just get me out of here. I don't want to do this ever again, right? Who's had that feeling before? I know I have, okay? That feeling comes so hard on the science test when you're starting to feel tired and stressed. So it is so important on science to remember to skip hard questions. This is the ultimate one, this 3-pass method that we keep talking about. This is the ultimate one where finding easy questions is so critical because there are really easy questions on science and there are a few really hard questions. If you get bogged down, if for whatever reason question number 2, it's not always number 2, but if for whatever reason question number 2 is the single hardest question that you guys see on the test, that is going to be detrimental to the rest of the exam. And that's what we can't have happen. We cannot let that happen to ourselves. Okay, we just have to skip number 2 and then find the 10 easy questions after. And guess what, guys? If you get, so finding easy questions, if you get 35 easy questions, if you get, let's say, or even if you get 30 out of 40 questions right, and then you guess the same letter down, right? So you guess just A down the rest of the way. You're going to get 3 more questions right. If you get 33 out of 40, that's going to be equal to like a 29 plus, 29 minimum on most recent science tests, if not higher. Like on the BO4 test, 33 out of 40 was like a 33. But if you get 30 questions right and you're guaranteeing that those 30 are right, that you were accurate on those, and you just guess the same letter down, right, you'll get 3 more of those questions right. That's 33 out of 40, that's a 29. If you're already scoring above a 29, this obviously doesn't work as well. You do have to get some of the harder questions right. But in order to continue to improve and feel better about your testing and your preparation, it would be great if you're not scoring already at a 29 to try this method and see if it works. I guarantee it does work. If you watch our videos, the other reason that we started filming the videos of me taking the test in real time is as I went through these different companies and they trained me and they talked about this big game. I couldn't stand how nobody would ever put these things into action. So I really wanted to show you guys that these strategies that we're using really do work. It's not a fluke, right? And they really do work, but it takes time to practice. It's not just going to happen overnight. You guys have to really develop the strategy so that when you're in the moment and you're feeling tired and exhausted and you see number 2, your first, and that's the hardest question on science, who knows when it's actually going to come up, your first thought is, let me just skip this one and let me do the easy stuff first. My laziness as a high school student helped me with that because I just had no pride in trying to challenge myself on hard questions. So I used this very effectively. I knew if I got 35 questions right and guessed on the remaining 5 questions that I'd probably get like a 33, 34 minimum on science. And then if I had a great day and for whatever reason there were certain passages that were supposed to be hard but they were actually easy for me, that's just luck sometimes, I knew that I could get into the 36 range for the science section. But I was totally okay getting less than that. And that was just my mindset. A lot of it was laziness that I didn't want to challenge myself. You know, it was kind of that competitive nature of wanting to best the person sitting next to me while also being lazy enough not to care enough. That's a really poor dynamic, and I promise you it doesn't work that well in every other aspect of your life. But on a test like this, it works pretty well because you just skip number 2. You're just like, oh, I don't want to do that one today. And you just skip it, and then you get 35 other questions right, and you get a 30 whatever plus 32 plus on the science section. And it really is really effective when you're feeling tired and you're feeling just like you don't want to be there anymore. I encourage you guys to watch the science videos. I think those are some of our best videos. Reading and science, I think, are the 2 best videos we do on the channel. I encourage you guys to watch those if you have time. Okay, but a lot of it is just about practicing and thinking about what's working for you. The thing that I want to leave you guys with, too, is that I don't know everything. And if you're seeing somebody that acts like they know everything in this, they don't. The strategies that work for me are the things that I'm saying. A lot of it is going to work, and I wanted to show you guys in the videos that a lot of it does work, and you can see it implemented in real time, that these are the strategies that I actually use, the ones that I'm saying, are the ones that I actually use on the exam. Okay, but there are tweaks that you want to make to your own strategy that are going to work better for you than they work for me. So don't take it as, you know, that this is the end-all, be-all, what I say has to go. Because then when you get to the test, if you're listening to what I'm saying, you're not listening to yourself when maybe another strategy would work well. And that's where the untimed portion of this really comes in and becomes really helpful. Okay? That's really, really important to remember. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. I certainly don't know everything about you. You don't know everything about me. You don't know what's going to work well for you or what's going to work well for me. Just these slight tweaks, particularly as you get into the higher numbers, 30 plus scores, these slight tweaks to help you. The margin of error is so slim at those levels because you're competing against such other high-level students that you need to find these little things within yourself that are going to make your testing better. And it's not always what I say. It's what you find in yourself. And the only way to do that is to be thinking about it and doing these things on time. Right? You want to be better. You want to improve each time. Okay, does that all make sense, guys? Anything else? Any other questions about this? Any other questions about all this? Okay, guys, if you feel good about this, I hope everybody had a. Oh. Yeah, so we talked about the reading section a little bit earlier. That was the first thing we covered, but it's a great question. I would absolutely, again, there's different strategies for the reading section. I am thoroughly convinced that the only way to stay consistent on the reading section is to read the entire passage. If you read the passage really thoroughly on the reading section, the question, first of all, the passages are written at an eighth grade reading level. Even if it doesn't seem like that, it doesn't seem like that on the test because it's so quick. You do have to be moving pretty quickly. But the passages are written at a really early level, and if you want to make up your time on the questions, not on the passage. You want to read the passage thoroughly, understand it, get the main idea and the tone of the passage, and there's only 90 double-spaced lines, right? Because it's 2 columns, so effectively double-spaced lines. If you read the passage for content and you're really focused, you will do extremely well with the questions. You'll be able to fly through those, and you can trust yourself because there's just not that much content. There's not that much you have to remember, and so you can be really, really very aware of your questions, of the questions rather. Be very aware of the questions. Okay. So again, guys, I hope all of this stuff. I hope you guys can continue to ask questions in the comment section. We're going to continue to host these reviews, so don't feel like this is the one time. I think it's really, really helpful and really appropriate. I think it's really, really helpful and really appropriate for you guys to be, especially if you're out of school right now. If you're in the U.S. and you have school off right now because of all the health stuff going on, this is a great opportunity. If you're a sophomore too, this is a great opportunity to continue to prepare. If you're a junior and you're like, oh my God, the April test got canceled, that's actually kind of in some ways, that's a gift. Because now the reason it got canceled is because you guys are out of school, and now you have plenty of time and a lot less stress. And for even if it's virtual, even if you're doing virtual classes right now, that's still a lot less stressful and a lot more efficient than regular school. So if you're doing virtual classes right now, you still have a ton of time on your hands to dedicate an hour a day. The last thing I'll leave you guys with is if you guys prepare, if you guys remember one concept, just one additional concept question per day, right? If you just work on that, that's probably an hour's worth of work to guarantee you have a concept down. By the end of it, by the end of 1 month, right? 1 month equals 30 concepts. Okay, and we say that for every 30 concepts on the test. So if you memorize 30 concepts, for every 30 concepts on the test, your score goes up by 4 overall points. Wherever those concepts fall, your overall score will jump 4 points. You guys have the opportunity to do that right now. Okay, so I'll leave that with you guys. Thank you guys as always for participating. I really appreciate it. You had so many great questions today. That makes it so much more enjoyable for me to answer those questions. A lot of great ones. If you have any other questions for me, please feel free to comment. Thank you for continuing to work as hard as you guys are. And yeah, we hope to see you guys on tomorrow during the ACT math review. We're going to talk about rules-based questions. So I can't remember the exact start time for that, but check out the channel. Tell your friends if they want to subscribe. We'd love to see more people on it, more answering more questions. And yeah, we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Awesome. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully see you tomorrow.